The contract was the kind of deal that reshaped careers, the sort of victory that should have been celebrated with a vintage bottle of something French and a quiet night with the person who'd seen you through the grind. Leo Hart held the signed papers, the ink still feeling warm, a tangible proof of 3 years of 70-hour weeks, sacrificed weekends, and strategic brilliance that had finally outmaneuvered Silas Thorne's biggest rival. Silas himself, the founder and undisputed king of Thorne Solutions, had clapped Leo on the shoulder with a grip that was more claim than congratulations. "This," Silas had said, his voice a low purr of satisfaction, "changes everything. For you, for me, for this company. Tonight, we celebrate not as boss and employee, but as partners in a new future." The celebration was not at a steakhouse or a high-end bar. Silas's assistant sent a car for Leo and his wife, Chloe, at 9 p.m., directing them to a converted warehouse in the city's trendy meatpacking district. The facade was unmarked, just weathered brick and a single heavy black door. Chloe, resplendent in a little black dress she'd bought for the occasion, clung to Leo's arm, her eyes wide with a mixture of anxiety and thrill. "This is so exclusive," she whispered. "Silas must really see something in you." Leo smiled, squeezing her hand, feeling the familiar surge of pride at providing, at impressing her. The door opened to a scene of subdued opulence. Low lighting, velvet banquettes, the air thick with the scent of oud and expensive perfume. It wasn't a typical club. There were no thumping bass lines, just an ambient electronic hum. Couples and small groups lounged, speaking in hushed tones. They were all beautiful, polished, radiating a casual wealth that felt generations deep. Silas found them immediately, emerging from a shadowed corner with 2 crystal coupes of champagne. He was with his wife, Sloane, a woman whose elegant chill made the room temperature drop. The Harts, the guests of honor. Silas beamed, handing them the drinks. His eyes, however, lingered on Chloe just a moment too long, a flicker of appraisal that made Leo's neck prickle. "Welcome to the aviary. Consider it my private boardroom for matters beyond the balance sheet." The evening progressed like a slow, surreal dream. The champagne was endless. Silas held court, speaking of paradigm shifts and disruptive intimacy, of breaking down bourgeois boundaries to achieve true, unfiltered connection. He spoke of trust as the ultimate currency. Leo nodded along, a professional habit, but his discomfort grew with each refill. Chloe, however, was enthralled. She laughed at Silas's jokes, her body language opening toward him, her gaze drinking in the lavish surroundings. Sloane watched it all with a faint, knowing smile. After an hour, Silas leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. "The real celebration is upstairs. The aviary has wings, for members and their most trusted associates. It's where partnerships are truly sealed, a gesture of absolute faith." He let the implication hang, his eyes darting between Leo and Chloe. Leo's blood went cold. He understood now. The ambient music, the paired couples, the cryptic name. This wasn't a lounge. It was a swingers club, a high-end, members-only playground for the powerful and bored. Chloe's hand tightened on his arm, but not in protest. Her fingers were tense with excitement. "Silas, this is incredibly generous," Leo said, his voice carefully neutral. "But I think we'll call it a night. It's been a long week." The atmosphere changed instantly. Silas's smile didn't fade, but it solidified into something mask-like. Sloane's eyebrow arched a millimeter. Chloe's face fell, a flash of desperate disappointment she couldn't conceal. "Really, Leo?" she said, a strained laugh in her voice. "Don't be such a square. It's an experience. An experience we don't need," Leo said firmly, standing up. He thanked Silas, his tone leaving no room for debate. The car ride home was a frozen wasteland. Chloe stared out the window, her body a rigid line of resentment. "You embarrassed me," she finally hissed. "In front of the most important man in our lives. He was offering us a place in his inner circle, and you threw it back in his face like some puritanical schoolboy." "He was offering to swap partners, Chloe," Leo said, his voice tired. "That's not an inner circle. It's a petri dish." "You don't understand anything," she spat. "It's about power. It's about being brave enough to live without limits. Silas and Sloane have a marriage we can only dream of. They're free." Leo looked at her, truly looked at her, in the strobe of passing streetlights. The woman he'd married, who loved bad movies and gardening, was gazing at him with utter contempt, already halfway into a world he found repulsive. The crack that night was seismic. In the weeks that followed, Chloe grew distant, then cold. She started working late, coming home with excuses that smelled of Silas's cologne. She bought new clothes, sharper, more expensive, funded by a sudden bonus she couldn't quite explain. Leo buried himself in work, but a new project had begun in the silent chambers of his mind. The night of the aviary had been a revelation. Silas Thorne wasn't just a demanding boss. He was a predator who used access and psychological manipulation as tools of control. And he had set his sights on Chloe. Leo began to dig, quietly, using the system access his new partner status afforded him. He wasn't looking for evidence of an affair. He was looking for leverage. And he found it, buried in encrypted server logs, in oblique references in old project notes, in the shell companies that fed into Thorne Solutions. Silas's empire, it turned out, was built on a foundation of stolen intellectual property, coerced non-competes, and at least 3 instances of corporate espionage so elegantly executed they'd never been traced. Leo copied everything. He compiled a digital dossier, not out of revenge, but out of a sudden, chilling understanding that he was in a war he hadn't known he was fighting. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday. Chloe had filed using a lawyer whose name was synonymous with draining wealthy husbands dry. Her demands were astronomical. Half of all assets, the house, spousal support based on his future earning potential, now tied to Thorne Solutions. She'd done her homework, or more likely, Silas's lawyer had done it for her. She served him at their home, with the same smug triumph she'd worn at the aviary. "I'm sorry, Leo," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "We've just grown apart. You're holding me back. Sign them. Make it easy." Leo scanned the documents, his heart a cold, hard stone in his chest. "Silas is paying for this, isn't he?" Chloe's mask slipped for a second, revealing naked ambition. "He understands what I deserve. He's not afraid of the future. I'm choosing a life without limits." She leaned in, her whisper a venomous dart. "I'm going to destroy you in court. Half of everything you have, everything you'll ever build at Thorne, will be mine. You should have taken the invitation, Leo. It was your only chance to keep me." Leo looked at her, this stranger in his wife's skin, and saw the end of his old life. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He simply took the papers and said, "We'll see what a judge says is fair." As she left, already texting on a phone he didn't recognize, Leo walked to his home office. He opened his secure laptop, the one not connected to the Thorne servers. He opened the dossier. He had planned to sit on it, to use it only if Silas turned on him professionally. Now it was personal. This wasn't just about protecting his assets. It was about ensuring that the world Silas and Chloe were so desperate to build together would crumble before they could take their first step inside. He drafted an email attaching encrypted files and sent it to 3 addresses: the head of the Securities and Exchange Commission's local division, a notoriously dogged financial journalist at the Wall Street Journal, and the CEO of the company whose tech Silas had stolen a decade prior. The subject line was simple: Thorne Solutions, a foundation of theft. He hit send. The game was no longer defense. It was annihilation. And Leo Hart, the puritanical schoolboy, had just made the first move. The summons to Silas Thorne's corner office came not as an email, but as a terse, silent presence of 2 corporate security officers at Leo's cubicle. The walk to the 40th floor felt like a perverse graduation march. The glass walls of Silas's domain offered a panoramic view of the city Leo had helped make Thorne's playground. Silas wasn't at his desk. He stood at the window, his back to the room, a silhouette of contained fury. On his massive monitor, frozen, was the email Leo had sent. "Explain," Silas said, the single word cracking through the air like a whip. He didn't turn around. Leo didn't sit. "I believe the attachments are self-explanatory, Silas. The code strings from Viridian Tech's Project Phoenix, in our flagship product. The financial trails to offshore accounts that coincide with the resignation of their lead engineer. The non-disclosure agreements you had your legal team bury in arbitration. You didn't build Thorne Solutions. You pirated it." Silas finally turned. His face was a calm mask, but his eyes were black pits of rage. "You have no idea what you've done, Hart. You're a gnat. I swat gnats before my morning coffee." "The SEC doesn't," Leo said quietly. "Nor does Catherine Blythe at the Journal, or Michael Rourke at Viridian. They have the evidence now, not accusations. Proof." A cruel smile touched Silas's lips. "And you think this saves you? From the divorce? From being nothing? My lawyers will tie you up for years. Chloe will get every penny you might have had. and you'll be unemployable, a pariah who betrayed the hand that fed him. You signed an NDA thicker than your skull. I signed an NDA regarding proprietary Thorn technology, Leo corrected. I'm disclosing stolen technology. That's not a breach of contract. It's a whistleblower protection. And as for the divorce, Leo allowed himself a small, cold smile. Chloe's claim is based on my future earnings at Thorn Solutions. By the time her lawyers get through discovery, there won't be a Thorn Solutions. Her settlement will be a percentage of ashes. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty, of pure hatred, crossed Silas's face. He'd underestimated the quiet man, the diligent worker. He'd mistaken principle for weakness. Get out, Silas snarled. You're finished. Leo left, his passcode already deactivated before he reached the elevator. It didn't matter. The avalanche had begun. The next 72 hours were a blur of quiet activity and public chaos. Leo met with his own lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Anya Rivera, who specialized in protecting whistleblowers and untangling marital assets. They filed an emergency motion to delay the divorce proceedings, citing a material and catastrophic change in the respondent's employment and financial landscape. They submitted Leo's evidence to the divorce court under seal. Meanwhile, the world outside erupted. Catherine Blythe's article hit the front page of the Journal's weekend edition. Code of Corruption. The Stolen Heart of Thorn Solutions. It was meticulous, damning, and included quotes from a livid Michael Rourke promising the most aggressive intellectual property litigation in a generation. The SEC launched a formal investigation. Thorn Solutions stock, the bedrock of Silas's wealth and Chloe's projected settlement, went into freefall, dropping 40% in the first day of trading. Leo watched it all from the modest apartment he'd rented, the silence a stark contrast to the maelstrom he'd unleashed. His phone buzzed incessantly, calls from unknown numbers, frantic texts from former colleagues, a torrent of voicemails. He listened to only one. It was from Chloe. The smug confidence was gone, replaced by a shrieking, panicked hysteria. What have you done? You've ruined everything. My lawyer says the prenup might be contested because of fraud. Silas isn't returning my calls. The shares he gave me are worthless. You pathetic, vindictive little man. You fix this. He deleted it. The divorce hearing, when it was finally held, was not in a packed courtroom, but in a sterile conference room over a video link. Chloe's lawyer, now looking harried and out of his depth, argued valiantly for the original settlement, claiming Leo's actions were a deliberate attempt to impoverish himself to avoid his obligations. Anya Rivera was a scalpel. Your Honor, my client did not impoverish himself. The asset in question, his career at Thorn Solutions, was built on a criminal foundation. He has exposed that foundation at great personal and professional risk. To award a settlement based on the proceeds of what is now the subject of multiple federal investigations would be tantamount to awarding proceeds from a bank robbery. The petitioner's association with Silas Thorn, the architect of this fraud, and her reliance on his promised resources, further complicates her claim to any equitable share of my client's legitimate, pre-Thorn assets, which are minimal. She presented their financials. Leo's savings, his 401k from before Thorn, the value of their home, which had a mortgage larger than its worth. The marital estate was a puddle, not an ocean. The judge, a weary-looking man with eyes that had seen every trick, reviewed the sealed evidence. He listened to the news reports playing on mute on a screen in the corner. He looked at Chloe's image on the monitor, her face now drawn and pale, stripped of its glamour and its triumph. The court finds, the judge said, his voice dry, that the respondent's future earning potential at Thorn Solutions is, at present, speculative at best and valueless at worst. The petitioner's claims, which are predicated on that potential, are therefore unsustainable. The marital estate will be divided as presented by respondent's counsel. Given the petitioner's demonstrated access to other resources, he gave a significant glance at the file mentioning Silas. The request for spousal support is denied. It was over. Chloe got half of their depleted savings. She got her car. She got nothing else. The gavel fell with a soft, final click. Leo logged off the video call. There was no victory dance, no surge of elation, only a profound, echoing stillness. Weeks later, the fallout was complete. Thorn Solutions was delisted, its assets frozen pending litigation. Silas Thorn was indicted on multiple counts of fraud, theft of trade secrets, and securities violations. His social media-ready empire was a smoking ruin, his name a synonym for corporate treachery. Leo saw a paparazzi photo of him trying to slip into a courthouse, his face haggard, the icy confidence utterly melted. A Chloe, there was no sign. Rumor among the few former colleagues who still spoke to Leo was that she'd confronted Silas, demanding he make good on his promises, and had been thrown out of his penthouse by security. She'd vanished from the city, likely chasing the next source of the glamorous life she felt she deserved, finding only the cold reality that such lives were often rented, not owned. Leo, meanwhile, received a call. It was Michael Rourke, the CEO of Viridian Tech. "Mr. Hart," he said, his voice gruff but not unkind. "I owe you a debt. What you did took guts. We're settling with the Thorne estate, and it's going to be substantial. More importantly, we're rebuilding. I need someone with integrity who understands the tech landscape and isn't afraid to do the hard, right thing. The job's yours if you want it." Head of Corporate Strategy. Leo accepted. He started the new job on a clear Monday morning. His office had a view, but it was smaller, humbler. Felt honest. He was building again, but this time on a foundation he could trust. He thought sometimes of that night at the aviary, of the fork in the road. One path led into the gilded, corrupt dark. He had chosen the other, the harder one, lit only by the cold light of principle. It had cost him his marriage, his immediate career, the illusion of a certain future. But it had given him back something more valuable, himself. The quiet man had not shouted his revenge. He had simply revealed the truth, and watched as the house of cards, built on theft and betrayal, collapsed under the weight of its own lies. And from the ashes, he alone walked away clean.